Hi, it's Mark, the Family Woodworker. This week we build and donate another piece of office furniture to support our local YWCA, a large live edge coffee table for their lobby. I think there's about 1,000 live edge slab table videos out on YouTube, so without intending for this to be a copycat build, it is actually a way for me to make and donate some needed furniture pieces to a local charity. This project is also pretty easy and a great entry-level woodworking project. Sometimes you can find these local live edge slabs in really good shape, already pretty flat, and ready for some cool looking steel legs that you can actually get from Amazon. Click, buy, screw the legs on your table, and you're done. You might need to do some sanding and some finishing, but that's about it. It's a truly amazing and simple little project you can take pride in. If you already own a cheap jigsaw and a sander, you're about ready to tackle this sort of project. My thick pine slab was mostly flat, though the kiln dry process caused the width of it to crown a little, requiring it to be flattened before I could consider mounting any legs. I wound up building a cheap router sled and bought a carbide flattening bit, and then did the back and forth electric slide to surface plane down the bottom. This will wind up giving me a flat base for leg attachment later. Eventually it was time to flip the slab over and repeat the flattening process. This early fabrication phase of a project is zen-like therapy for me. I tend to drift away in thought about making useful things for people created from rough raw materials like wood. I think about next steps for the project I'm working on and how to improve or tweak the methods I might use to finish the wood, and I'm always thinking about the final design and what the piece will look like finished. Arm movement and tool usage becomes automated at this point, cutting, trimming, or smoothing the wood, knowing that it all leads to a useful and hopefully attractive piece of furniture. The ends of the table were just pretty ugly, showing the leftover jagged damage from whatever chainsaw was used. I followed a hand-drawn pencil line to cut a random, imperfect curve on the ends, making it look as naturally curvy as I could. My jigsaw was tilted to follow the tapered angle of the live edge, and the damaged ends were removed. Rounded, smooth, organic, those were my guiding principles on this simple coffee table design. Using a wood carving wheel, I blended the curves of the cut ends with the outer tree edges. The actual live edges along the bark line were also incredibly sharp, so they were knocked down with that same wheel to round them over. This way, a morning coffee drinker can enjoy the day without being assaulted by the edges of a coffee table. And then finally, the loose bark and the dirt was ground off with a sanding wheel, because those loose remnants simply fall off or flake off over time, even if you coat them with finishes. There were also a couple of spots that needed some blackened epoxy to fill those gaps. There was one big hole on the end and another around a knot on the tabletop. With all the rough prep now done on the slab, it was time for some leg design. While I think black steel legs would always look pretty cool on a table like this, it's hard to call this a woodshop project if I don't make some legs. I could do something wild and attention-grabbing. I've done some pretty nutty leg designs in the past, but I preferred the attention to be on the tabletop rather than the legs. They need to be sturdy, of course, and maybe something a little angular in style. And here's where I steal an idea from an old work buddy, Thor, from Minnesota. He had built some dark angle-cut legs for his own coffee table project, and they looked pretty beefy and really cool. They will be positioned on an angle, in line with the leg on the opposing corner of the slab. Not that it's got corners, of course, but you know what I mean. I used a simple drill jig to help make consistent holes on the slab and each leg to accept my odd joinery choice, but more on that in a minute. Matching the curved theme from the tabletop, I'll use a roundover bit to give the legs some softer curved edges and proceed to staining the legs in Minwax True Black, which gives the legs an almost blackened steel look. The next day was all about finish sanding for the top and the legs. That flattening bit did a pretty nice job smoothing out the slab surface, so there wasn't too much sanding required, which is fine because I hate sanding. For the top, I went back and forth with my son about adding some color to the wood grain. It was pine after all, so it would be naturally light in color and normally without a lot of wood grain character. But I think I liked the hints of pastel color found on the outer edges of the slab and wanted to keep that character in the finished piece. The choice of finish was harder to finalize, but I chose to brush on polyurethane in multiple coats for some moisture, coffee spill protection. This way it'll be semi-indestructible. The black stain on the legs was dry, and they only needed some light steel wool prep work before spray lacquer could be applied. I also set up my laser engraver with the YWCA logo to personalize the tabletop for their office, and that burned image came out pretty well too. A nice little touch to make it a personalized component for the YWCA offices. This leg attachment will be non-traditional, but it's highly effective. Using some thickened epoxy in a boat building syringe, epoxy was fed down into the pre-drilled holes and the steel threaded rod followed. With the excess epoxy wiped off and some weight added to hold them flat on the bottom, it'll take 24 hours for those legs to harden and cure. It's an unconventional and permanent attachment option, but we're only talking about a coffee table. It's not too heavy to lift and doesn't really need to come apart anyway. And so, epoxy filled all the holes, 3-inch steel threaded rods were inserted into each leg, and the legs were installed onto the bottom of the pre-drilled table. There was, of course, a little epoxy squeeze out that needed to be cleaned up, but no biggie. Also, since traditional clamps wouldn't work on this glue-up job, steel weights were added to the leg, keeping pressure against the top until the epoxy had cured. The finished table looks pretty awesome, and it was a relatively easy build. It's the kind of project that brings instant gratification because you can knock out a project like this in a couple days or less. It does look great now sitting in their office lobby, and of course my wife, who was visiting with me, noticed that they needed 2 end tables on both sides of the couch, so another project is looming. The overall style of the table matches the blackleg computer desk I built more than a month before, so I think I'll stick with that same leg design theme going forward. It also feels good to donate another piece of furniture to a local, community-focused organization like this, especially when their mission statement is all about supporting and empowering women. My son and I also have a couple of artistic projects lined up for their upcoming auction fundraiser this fall, and I have a couple ideas for other items needed by local shelters in the area who are supported by the YWCA. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. We hope you give us a thumbs up, that you subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment too. We appreciate it. Take care.